What is going on, guys? It is Fluxified here and welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about the possibility of a new or updated Recoil coming to Rust Console Edition. Over the last few months, the developers have dropped a lot of hints about a Recoil change coming, to the point where I now think it's pretty much inevitable and it may even be a lot closer than we think. In this video we're going to talk about what new Recoil actually means, break down all of the evidence from the developers about this coming, and of course I'm going to share my own thoughts on this about what it could mean for the future of Rust Console. There's a lot to get into, so without further ado, let's get into it. So to start off, what do we mean by new Recoil? Well, when we say this, we're actually referencing a very specific update that the PC version of Rust received back in June 2022, called the Combat Update. Before that update, every gun in the game had its own unique recoil pattern. If you take the AK for instance, if you really wanted to master that weapon, you basically had to dedicate hours in recoil training servers, learning the exact recoil of that gun. It was skill based and difficult, but once you learned it, it really felt like an achievement and that barrier that separated skilled players from the more average player base. In June 2022, however, this all changed with the introduction of the Combat Update. Instead of the previous fixed spray pattern, the developers introduced what they called a gradient based aim system. In short, it basically made the recoil of each gun a lot easier to control. Weapons of course still had some form of recoil, but it was nowhere near as skill based as previously, and it became a lot more about positioning in gunfights as well as where you're actually aiming on a player, as opposed to how good you actually were at controlling the recoil for your weapon. Bringing this back to Rust Console Edition, our version of the game still has the old style of recoil. You really have to put the time in to learn the recoil of each weapon, otherwise you're just not going to stand a chance in a gunfight. Now, if console got the updated recoil, it would definitely shake up the meta of the game. Previously hard to control guns would get used a lot more by the more casual players, and I guess it would make the game a lot more accessible to newer players as well, since they could pretty much pick up any gun and get right into the action straight away. Another huge point to why new recoil would be good is because of the current state of cheating on console Rust. Now, the developers have previously stated that cheats like wall hacks or aimbot simply aren't possible on console, but third-party devices running recoil scripts that automatically remove your weapon's recoil do unfortunately exist. And you know, if the developers did introduce a easier recoil system or this new recoil, I would argue that those scripts lose most of their advantage, and it would help level the playing field just that small amount. Breaking down what the Rust console developers have said about new recoil coming, this all initially started pretty recently on June 28th, 2025, with a question asked by the official Rust console Twitter account stating the following: when it comes to gun recoil, what is your opinion? Do you choose the red card and bring PC recoil to console, or the blue card and keep it the same? Now, I do feel like this question as a whole is a pretty big hint in itself that this is something the developers were already considering, and for what it's worth, there were a ton of people in the comments saying red card, aka give us the PC recoil on console. Following this, in August 2025, there was a player feedback survey that asked not one but two separate questions relating to new recoil. The first question asked if you could pick one major feature to come to Rust console, what would it be, with new recoil as one of the options, and in the same survey under it they asked what are your thoughts on recoil, with the options as bring PC recoil to console or leave recoil the same. Now that is two direct questions, pretty much back to back, which really only adds fuel to the fire that new recoil is something clearly being heavily discussed behind the scenes, as it does seem like we're being asked as players on our opinion on new recoil quite a lot. Finally, in the big September 2025, Pedro Silva, the Rust console community manager, answered a player on Discord who asked the following: why did D11 change their opinion from PC recoil is never coming to asking people about it? And Pedro Silva responded with the following: the new recoil was never out of the question. What I mentioned was that this one, or the current one we have, would be maintained as much as we could. New weapons only have the new recoil, which adds a extra layer of complexity complexity when porting. Another is that a lot of the community want the new Recoil, and just like with every feature, we are always open to add what players want. Now that response is pretty much a confirmation in itself, but just to recap, the developers have said that they know we want this new Recoil as a community, and they're always open to adding what we want. Honestly, I think this pretty much confirms new Recoil will come at some point, and it really seems now more like a question of when will this come instead of will. Obviously, with the quality of life update right around the corner, it would be a great time for us to see this. However, with the current quality of life update live on the test branch already, it doesn't seem like new Recoil will come with the quality of life update so far. I also personally asked Rustzilla, one of the Rust console developers, if we could expect any major changes coming with the quality of life update other than what's currently live on the public test branch, and his response to this was that most of the changes in the quality of life update are currently live on the test branch, and there may be one or two things added in future, but he couldn't say exactly what this would be. Now this gives me the impression that new Recoil won't come with the quality of life update, and to be honest, I am surprised that we don't seem to have so many changes with the quality of life update other than the addition of the triangle planters. To me, it just seems a little bit weird considering how many additions and changes we got with the last update, the modular vehicles. In any case, back on topic, for me personally, I would welcome new Recoil. It would add a shake up to the game meta without needing to add new weapons, and don't get me wrong, I would love to see new weapons come to the game that are currently on the PC version, like the SKS or the high caliber revolver, but until then, tweaking the recoil of the current guns in the game would give the gunplay fresh life, and honestly, anything that helps level the playing field against cheaters and legit players is a win for me. At the end of the day, the developers keep bringing the topic of new Recoil up, and although they haven't said 100% we will have this, to me, all of these mentions are no coincidence, and as Pedro has said, the developers are aware that we want this, so it really feels like this change is not far away at all. Now I do believe that just about wraps up this video. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on new Recoil in the comments down below. Would you like to see this come to the game, or do you prefer the current Recoil system as it is? Definitely let me know down below. Until then though, thank you for watching. I have been Fluxified, and I'll see you on the beach.